Black, A. White, E. Red, I. Green, U. Blue, O. Vowels. Someday I'll reveal the secret of your birth. A. Black, shaggy corset of dazzling flies that drone around death angels. Gulfs of darkness. E. Innocence of mist and white pavilions. Lances of proud glaciers, snowy kings, quiver of Queen Anne's lace. I. Crimson. Spat blood. Laughter of lovely lips in anger, or in drunken penitence. U. Cycles. Sacred resonance of viridescent seas. Peace of pasture. Scattered animals. Peace of wrinkles. Alchemy, imprints upon the broad and thoughtful brow. Oh, great clarion, strange and strident cries. Silence, crossed by worlds and angels. O, Omega, violet brilliance of those eyes. So the original poem that I just recited is by Arthur Rimbaud, as many of you know. That translation is by Holly Tannen. She teaches folklore and anthropology and has lectured on contemporary magic at UC Berkeley and at Yale University. I wanted to start with that poem because of all of Rimbaud's poems, I think that this one most readily and intentionally translates into a visual language. It's often considered in relation to synesthetic perception because of the colors assigned to letters. In Rimbaud's historical time period of the late 19th century, many people were interested in metaphor, symbolism, and synesthesia. Rimbaud's predecessor, Charles Baudelaire, made experimental lists of sensory correspondences, and Rimbaud seems to have carried that idea even further with his sonnet Voyelle, vowels. I am trying to carry this even further with my visual adaptation of Illuminations. I call it a visual adaptation rather than saying that I'm illustrating the poems, because typically with illustration, one would pick out a key image from a text to represent visually, whereas I'm trying as best I can to represent, using my own visual language, all of the characters, environments, moods, themes, and everything else that is mentioned in the words of the poems. On top of that, the poems themselves are contained within the image, so that the verbal and visual elements can work together to enhance the sensory experience. I've always been very drawn to surrealist art, and although Arthur Rimbaud preceded the surrealists by 50 years, his insistence on the poet becoming a seer and his exploration of the imagination and unconscious realm became a central influence on the philosophy of surrealism as it was described by André Breton and the other leaders of the movement. Illuminations in particular exemplifies the magical use of language that Breton and his peers viewed as the mechanism for using language to change reality. The individual poems are ripe with cross-sensory illusions that for me spark images, smells, sounds, and feelings. Illuminations has been translated multiple times into many languages and has made ripples into other artistic modes, having inspired Prince by Ferdinand Léger, Total Eclipse, a play that's about the poet's life during the writing of Illuminations. And this play later was turned into a film starring a young Leonardo DiCaprio as Rimbaud, and also a musical adaptation by Benjamin Britten. To me, Britten's orchestral Illuminations piece could be called an adaptation similar to what I am attempting with my artworks, but in the musical medium. The similarity being that both works contain the poems and their associated meanings while also expanding the symbolism. It is almost a truism at this point that various modes of artistic expression, from poetry to painting, dance, theater, and film, are somehow related or share something in common. The precise nature of their interrelation and how it impacts the feasibility of adaptation and exchange of ideas between artistic modes is not well understood. The most obvious examples of cross-disciplinary approaches to solving the same artistic problems can be found in the works of surrealists and the proto-surrealists like Rimbaud, who planted the seeds of their focus. Cross-pollination of literature, visual art, and film is a characteristic part of surrealism, and similar ideas are expressed in surrealistic terms in different modes. This may be due to the fact that what could be called surrealistic terms are intentionally and even ideologically anti-rational, so they present mainly to our perceptive rather than our logical powers. Surrealism is also uniquely centered around the broad aims of exploring the inner world of our subconscious minds, which does not lend itself logically to one medium over another, because our internal worlds include experiences and illusions composed of all types of sense data, both real and imagined. The prose of Illuminations inspires my visual imagination while also igniting my other senses, creating impressions of moods and emotional landscapes. Through reading the original French text along with various English translations, as well as listening to musical translations, I worked to gain an understanding of the visual metaphors and undulating emotional context of the poems. I try as best I can to visually express the central cross-sensory impressions and tensions contained in the writing. My artworks use magical visual metaphors and unusual juxtapositions to evoke the origin of images at their moment of creation, in the same way that the surrealist poets strove to restore the vitality of language by detaching it from concepts and repressive rationality. The title, Illuminations, refers to colored plates, and to me, that is a sign that this is a literary work that is practically begging for the accompaniment of images that mirror the ability of the words to be a catalyst of imagination and to change reality by changing perceptions. I combine traditional materials like charcoal, oil paint, oil pastel, and watercolor with non-traditional media like markers, crayons, and colored pencils, as well as collage elements. I often use this mixed media process, which allows me to attain the widest range of colors, textures, and expressiveness of mark making. Using the computer as a tool gives me the greatest freedom in terms of staging and restaging the elements of my collage until I'm happy with my composition. The poems and Illuminations use the highly charged symbols of nature mythology, alchemy, religion, fairy tale, and legend as their materials. One of my favorite philosophers, Suzanne Langer, said once that symbols of those types are not bound to any particular words, nor even to language, but may be told or painted, acted or danced, without suffering distortion or degradation. When the poems and illuminations are considered together and in relation to each other, they coalesce. The coalescence of these symbols and themes creates the semblance of a cosmic epic. This feeling of the epic is created through what some philosophers have called the mythological principle of condensation of meanings, which utilizes multiple meanings, representative figures, and repetition instead of proof. Within this semantic, the poet is able to present a philosophical idea directly to our perception of its emotive and imaginative possibilities. And this poetic core of a verbal work can be given new power through the addition of visual illusions that add to the accumulation and/or apparentness of meanings. The difference between a sea, which rose in layers above, as in old engravings, this one here, and a sea made of an eternity of hot tears, which is how the sea is described in Childhood Part 2 behind you. Those differences can be made apparent through pictorial techniques that take metaphorical qualities as literal and support, if not express, the same core poetic symbolism. So although poetic facts have no existence apart from values, their significance requires a spark of literal acceptance, of taking poetic statement as a fact of some order, with meaning related to inner truths rather than measurable external realities. Rimbaud presents this sort of ambivalent, paradoxical idea so successfully, it has been said that atheists and Catholics, mystics and surrealists can all find doctrinal confirmation in his work. The paradoxical nature of a character, like the prince in Tale, who both violently destroys the genie he needs and is the genie, can be conceptually revealed through an ambiguous and metamorphosing visual form as clearly as it can be expressed poetically, and more easily than non-poetic language could express a similar idea. My interest in this topic and my passion for the project has continued to grow. Initially, I created these collages with the original French text, but I've expanded the project to incorporate my own English translations of the poems because I really want everybody to be able to engage with the content as well as the visuals. While I was a graduate student in London, I also made a sort of pilgrimage to Rimbaud's hometown, and I traveled to a few of the other cities he lived in. I photographed a lot of the places he'd been and things that seemed relevant to the work and to his life, and I'm slowly incorporating some of that imagery in my project as well. I plan to be working on this slowly and thoughtfully for a long time to come.
All right.
And I was going to end with, since it's an ongoing project, this is the next poem in the series that I've been working on now. This is from the Ashbury translation. It's called Sideshow. Very robust rascals. Several of them have exploited your worlds, with no pressing needs, and in no hurry to bring into play their brilliant faculties and their experience of your consciences. What mature men! Their eyes glazed like the midsummer night, red and black, tricolored, steel pierced with gold stars, facial features deformed, leaden, ashen, on fire, playful hoarseness, the cruel procedures of discarded fineries. There are a few young men. What would they think of Cherubino? Endowed with frightening voices and some dangerous resources, They are sent off to be buggered in cities, swathed in disgusting luxury. O most violent paradise of the enraged grimace, no comparison with your fakirs and other theatrical buffoonery. Wearing improvised costumes in nightmarish taste, they act out ballads, tragedies of thieves and demigods, of a spirituality hitherto unknown to history or religions. Chinese, Hottentots, gypsies, nincompoops, hyenas, Molochs, old dementias, sinister demons, they mingle populist, maternal tricks with bestial poses and tenderness. They would perform new plays and nice girl songs. Expert jugglers. They transform people and places and resort to magnetic comedy. The eyes flame, the blood sings, the bones swell. Tears and trickles of red descend. Their raillery or their terror lasts a minute, or entire months. I alone know the plan of this savage sideshow.
Yeah.